Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today in politics, we'll be discussing what's currently going on in politics today concerning American democracy, the economy, assault weapons legislation, and the January 6th insurrection. First things first, as I said before, and as we always believe here at Soluble, we're broadcasting for answers, for solutions, everyday solutions that will bring us closer together as Americans, make us stronger financially, morally, etc. And as I said, we're always looking for the solution to the problem. And we welcome any comments. Of course, we might get some jokesters, some haters, negative people speaking negative, and always just constantly negative, Debbie Downer type people. But at the end of the day, as I said, whatever it takes to get to the solution. So we're looking for, we welcome a wide range of opinions, facts from our listeners, or for those who might be chiming in during any particular broadcast. Now, when it comes to the economy, there are strong indicators that the American economy is headed towards recession. We hope that not to be the case. We hope that it doesn't end up like that. But the current president that we have in, and I'm not just saying this because he's Democrat and I vote Democrat, but he seems to be pulling every lever, pushing every button at his disposal to try and alleviate the pain that we're feeling in our everyday financial lives when it comes to high gas prices at the pump, high prices at the grocery store, used cars, etc. We feel as if he's pushing all the buttons that he can push in order to bring some relief. And if not, as I've said before, we have to get active. We have to, make calls. We have to write letters. This is the system, as I said, that we live in. And in order to make it work better for you, you have to actively participate in it 100%. When you don't, then you get what you get. As I've said before, a no vote, not for Biden at all, or just not casting a ballot at all, is a vote for the other side, and vice versa, and definitely vice versa. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on that is beyond the president's control. He's been dealt a set of circumstances that has him grappling, has him searching, high and low for whatever he can do to bring about relief. I mean, he can't control what Russia is doing in Ukraine, what Russia is doing with world food markets, how it's holding the vast majority of Europe hostage when it comes to the fact that it's a big supplier of oil and natural gas to the region. So there's very little he can do there. China hasn't got back up to full speed with its economy, with its ability to produce, with its ability to ship. I don't know what's going on now, but I checked a couple weeks ago. In Shanghai, the COVID pandemic was still raging there. They're having citywide lockdowns, and Shanghai is a city of millions of people. So another set of circumstances there that the president is very limited in what he can do. Very limited in what he can do. Now more than ever, now more than ever, we need people to reach across the aisles. We need to work across the aisles with each other more than ever and try to come up with a solution here. Oftentimes the Republican solution is especially when it comes to high gas prices. The first thing they want to say is, or the first thing they're thinking is drill, baby, drill. This is what the lobbyists are paying them to say. So, of course, it doesn't matter whether they think drilling is the solution or not. They're getting paid a lot of money by these rich corporations, these greedy lobbyists, to lobby for more drilling, no matter how much it hurts the environment. This is one of the things that has become the leading cause of why the climate is suffering so now, because you have these rich people at the top who don't care about pollution, the CO2 that they may be sending up into the air through their plants of operation, et cetera, et cetera. So drilling with environmental responsibility, if there is such a thing, let's talk about it. We expect our Democrats that we send up to Washington, D.C. to work hand in foot with the Republicans. Be the bigger person. Be the bigger party. I mean, adamantly fight for what we believe in. Stand on principle. Stand firm on what we want and where we stand as Democrats on the environment. But if there is some safe way to protect the environment, protect the climate, and do more drilling, I'm quite sure that the Democrats are willing to listen to whatever proposals that the Republicans may have in order to bring some relief to the lives, to the pocketbooks of everyday Americans. We don't know what it will take to turn the economy around just on a dime when there are, like I said, still some disruptions in the supply chain. And unfortunately, it is where we are. We have a war in Ukraine, as I said. China's not fully recovered from the pandemic to get back up to full production speed. These are things that is beyond 46's control. But we trust, and we're watching. We're not going to trust and turn a blind eye or stand idly by. But we trust and we're watching to see if, as I said, the president pushes all buttons, pulls all levers at his disposal for the sake of the economy. For the sake of the economy. But right now, as I said, regrettably so, it's possible that we could be heading towards recession based on what some of the leading economical experts are saying. So, I mean, what can we do with the things that are within our control? Green energy, where it may be suitable, where it may be an economic gain for us to invest in it. That's one solution. Food prices, the prices of used cars. All of these things are tied into shipping, supply and demand. So wherever it's at now, let's hope the needle can be moved to a more positive area where we don't head into a recession, where we don't, wind up in the red. Right now, like most Democrats, we feel as though the economy is in better hands with Democrats in control at this point. At any point, as a matter of fact. So, as I said, let's keep the pressure on, keep a watchful eye, watch what the president is doing, and hopefully he can make whatever moves that are necessary to help the economy get back on track. But right now we're reeling. You have Secretary of the Treasury Mnuchin, Presidential Advisor Jared Kushner. They're smoozing with the Saudis days, weeks after the election, right before they're leaving office. They're smoozing with the Saudis, cutting deals. Maybe we can get some of our Republican colleagues to hold negotiations, hold talks. Maybe they may increase oil output. Get OPEC to pump a little bit more, put more oil into the market, because with the war in Ukraine and how we're trying to battle Putin and stop him from taking what we consider now blood money from oil and gas and getting richer and ramping up his war machine even more. We've taken 12 million barrels per day off the market by some estimates from experts on the situation. We've taken some 12 million barrels per day off the market. So that's a strong indicator or strong reason, if you will, that we're dealing with these high prices in gas. And it has begun to affect the food prices worldwide more and more. With Ukraine being big time grain producers, it's starting to affect the food prices more and more. So we can go a long ways in, doing whatever we can to discourage this war, to hope that Russia will stand down or bring it to an end. The president has done a great job of uniting NATO, forming a coalition with NATO to be a deterrent, if you will, towards Russian aggression. We don't need NATO to be more in lockstep with the current president of the United States than the previous president is. Saying things like it's a smart and savvy move, wanting bribes to give Ukraine what's rightfully theirs, what has already been approved by law. It makes Russia have lesser respect for Ukraine. I mean, it's right there. It makes them have lesser respect. It makes it seem as if, freedom for Ukraine doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. So perhaps it would go a long ways in shortening this conflict, bringing this conflict to an end, if we could, get more vocal help from our Republican colleagues to speak out against it, to stand up against it. Putin's there's a list of Americans that are banned from Russia now. Guess who's not on that list? So we need 45 to stand up, and say something positive towards ending this war. If it costs you your freedom to travel to Russia, if it puts you on the list of banned U.S. American citizens, it's worth it to let freedom have a chance of reigning, letting democracy have a chance of winning time and time again over autocracy. Democracy over autocracy. So, as I said, stand up, put some skin in the game for ending the war, not doing things to bolster Putin's confidence or to egg him on. This will go a long ways in helping the economy heal, getting things back on track to where we have economic gain versus economic losses. The economy is, at the forefronts constantly when it comes to what's on the list of importance to American voters. It's constantly, and rightfully so, the economy, our well-being, our livelihoods. We value that. So as far as the economy is concerned, everybody play their part. Keep a watchful eye on what Democrats are doing. The Fed chair has spoken. They're considering raising interest rates. So they're trying to do whatever they can, whatever tweaks, whatever buttons they can push or whatever to make things better. They're trying. They're working hard at it. They're doing their due diligence day in and day out. So, overall, the buck stops at the Oval Office with whoever is occupying it at that particular time. And as I said, if you feel like the president is not, doing a good job, you have to write. You have to You have to make the call. You have to do whatever the American voter is allowed to do once they put a person in office. Then you have to stay engaged. You have to stay engaged. Could drill, baby drill be the answer? I doubt it. But we're willing to listen. We're willing to see what they have to offer as far as drilling, as well as protecting the environment. I mean, if you're going to drill and you can drill in a safe way to protect the environment, but in order to do so, you need a piece of equipment that's going to cost $25,000, $200,000. What, buy that piece of equipment and then go and drill, baby drill. But protecting the environment is at the utmost importance when it comes to drilling also, for the sake of our clean air, for the sake of the animals who dwell there. It's very important. Moving on to assault weapons legislation. This has been a tough one, for a lot of Americans. I mean, it's been in the news here lately because of the sheer number of mass shootings that are taking place across America on a daily basis. What is the answer here? What is the solution? It seems that we're in a drunken state of violence, a drunken state of rage. Why? Why? With these last two mass shootings, the most notable last two, which was Uvalde and Buffalo, these two shooters were both in their teens. While we can say that we have to take into consideration what the mental state of these individuals were. Did they have certain mental issues? We have to remember also that these were young men. They were very young men, still in a more of a childish-like state, quite possibly, than they were an adult, mature state. So while it could be said that it could be something mental, let's check the mental health. These young men were old enough to be living with their parents, or old enough to where they were still around their parents, and a simple solution would have been for the parents to report them. How hard is that? I mean, we have a 16-year-old here at home. We know what she's doing when she's not in school, studying, or spending time with her friends. She's on her phone. She may be watching a movie on Netflix, but we know what she's doing. To the point where if she had a fascination with guns, if she was around an AR-15 or any other assault type weapon, we would know that. And we would be able to nip it in the bud and stop it immediately before she brought any harm to herself or others. So we don't want to use, mental health as an excuse. We don't want to use it as an excuse. If there's a valid point, if there's grounds, really good grounds to say that there was a mental health issue here, then if you're 18 and you have a mental health condition and you're still around your elders, most notably your mother, father, aunts, or whatever, then it's those people's job to bring this to the forefront. Not wait until people have died, little children have been slaughtered in their classrooms in the last days of school, to come out and say, okay, it was a mental health issue. When it can be, when mental health can be something that is brought to the forefront before the shooting starts, we feel like that can be the case, especially when they're this young. Now, if the mass shooter was 25 or older, anywhere from 25 to 35, then we can't say that, well, their parents should have known about it before it came to this. But 18 years old, and you're still at home with your parents, then there could have been that's a preventative measure. The parent has to step up. Oftentimes we have these parents who are being friends with their children, or who feel as if going into their child's room would be invading their privacy. As I said, with our 16-year-old here, if she had a fascination with guns, we would know about it. it would raise red flags with us immediately. Immediately. And we would definitely do something about it before it came to the point where she could harm herself, or worse, go out and harm others. So we've taken the assault weapons legislation, and thus far we've talked about background checks, waiting periods. These are Band-Aid solutions on a wound that needs stitches. Again, these are Band-Aid solutions on a wound that needs stitches. What do we need assault weapons for? Are there areas in the country where the wild boars and the wild hogs and the varmints in the chicken coops, it's really gotten that bad, that the only way to deter these critters and to keep yourself out of harm's way when you're out in the woods from these predatory creatures is to have a weapon where you can commit an assault on said creature or critter. This is bogus, and we have to call it as such here at Soluble. When it's bogus, we have to call it as such. An assault weapon is a weapon of war. It's a weapon of war. And as American citizens, who are you going to war with? As I said, do you have, raccoons and wild boars, invading your chicken coops and invading your property, by the dozens? Then yeah, you would have to commit assault on said critters. On said critters, you would have to commit assault. If they was coming like some of the movies we saw before, the invasion of the rats or the invasion of the rabbits. Some of these movies from back in the day where these creatures just multiply and multiply until to the point where they're taking over. We don't have that right now. We don't have that. And once again, if we did, it probably would be best to bring the military in. An assault weapon is a weapon for war. Nothing more. Nothing more. So let's break this down as we're looking for a solution. To say, what does an American citizen need an assault weapon for? Not an intruder, a burglar, a robber, thief, or whatever. You don't need that kind of firepower. We've seen it. We've seen people break into people's houses and it's made the news. Not as of late, but we've all seen it. Where the homeowner comes out with their pistol and starts shooting. Or just a simple, weapon that will make the robber, the crook, the burglar, whatever, they'll back up. They're ready to flee. Because they don't want to catch that one bullet that has them at the hospital. And now they're trying to explain how and why they got shot. The assault weapon, AR-15. Rush out and get one at your local gun store and see how many people you can kill. It's not worth it. I mean, we have traps for these animals also. We should be trying to resort to any means necessary. Even though we know this is bogus, we're going to play along. Even though we know it's bogus. This is coming out of the Republican playbook. They have no good reason. They have no good excuse. Nothing to rationalize why we as American citizens need assault weapons. None. None whatsoever. And it's a negative for all of American society. Even Republican voters want something different. As my man Matthew McConaughey said last week, the Second Amendment has been hijacked. It's been hijacked. So Republican voters out there as well as Democratic voters need to take a long look at this, because it definitely has a negative domino effect. I mean, can you imagine people who are already in a state of depression, anxiety? They're battling manic depression. They're thinking suicide. They're highly suicidal. When they see these shootings, it makes them more hopeless. It gets them even more depressed. And it's affecting the lives of everyday American citizens just like that. There is no race war. There is no race war. American citizens are dying. While we may be stockpiling these semi-automatic weapons, these assault weapons, waiting for the day. Meanwhile, innocent children, innocent everyday Americans are dying. They're dying. It has a domino effect. It definitely has a domino effect on the American psyche. And it's a negative, lose-lose situation, no matter how you twist it or turn it, because it is a weapon of war. No assault weapons ban. No raising the mandatory age to purchase assault weapon to 21. There's a prowler outside Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh's house here last week. You hear Mitch McConnell quick to be vocal about, ramping up protection and extremists going wild, liberal extremists going wild, or what have you. Nothing about Uvalde. Nothing about Uvalde, where innocent kids have been slain. Nothing. Nowhere near as vocal. This is a Republican priority. They're owned by the gun lobby, the NRA. Yet, every time there's a bad guy with a gun, this good guy is never around to come and save the day. Or else these 19 school children, along with their 2 teachers, would still be alive today. But we know the outcome of that situation. How can a party of people be pro-life and pro-AR-15 when they represent opposite things? Your Republicans are staunch defenders, and rightfully so, to protect the life of the unborn. But what about after they're born? What about after they're here? Do you not feel the same need, the same urge? Do you not have the same determination to protect them after they're born? How crazy is that? On one hand, you're pro-life. On the other hand, you're pro-AR-15. You can't play both sides of the fence. The world is watching. The American voter needs to wake up and wisen up and look at the innocent people, the innocent lives that are being affected by lifting of the assault weapons ban, by taking away the ban on assault weapons in everyday public life. Since the 90s, since the law was struck down, look what has happened. Look what has happened. Lies, propaganda, conspiracies. When there's a mass shooting, that's where the Republicans want to go. That's the solution. As soon as the mass shooting happened in Uvalde, then you have Congressman Paul Gosar saying it was a trans liberal. Even so, even if it was, what are you saying there? that since it was a trans liberal, it's okay. That America should understand that this is a trans liberal who done this. Just wild, bogus conspiracies. This is in the Republican playbook. Open it up, as I've said before. Study it, know it, learn how to defeat it. This is in the Republican playbook. This congressman's own siblings spoke out against him and warned the American public against him, that he was no good, that he was corrupt, that he was bigoted, racist, twisted. Congressman Paul Gosar, his own siblings, his own brothers and sisters, didn't have nothing good to say about him when he put in his nomination for office. So that tells you a lot there. But this is what they do. As soon as there's a shooting, then they want to start to stir up all kinds of conspiracies, innuendo, lies, propaganda, you name it. It's all in the playbook. It's all in the playbook. Where's Bill O'Reilly when we need him? You know, I know he got thrown off the air for immoral behavior, indecent behavior, but there's no spin zone. We need it now. Another thing in the playbook that they like to use, another tool in the playbook that they definitely like to use, spin. They love to spin it. The American voter needs to wise up because the assault weapon is nothing but a killing machine. It's nothing but a killing machine. And it's destroying everyday lives of innocent Americans. It's making it harder for them. And the Republicans refuse to see this. There's no sympathy there. We could not get 10 Republican senators to cross the aisle to vote for common sense gun legislation. Legislation that will make the American public safer. Will take away the stress levels, the depression levels. People are going through it out here. People are really mentally suffering. People are really mentally suffering. And every time there's another one of these mass shootings, it does nothing to help the situation. It does nothing to make America great again. As soon as one of these shootings happen, begin to start spinning. Propaganda, lies, false accusations. It's not mental health. It is the age limit, because when you're 18 years old, and as I said, you have a weapon with that kind of power that's capable of doing that kind of killing, then can you imagine a child, a person who's more in a childish state of mind, they are in a responsible grown-up state of mind, walking around with this kind of firepower, or being able to go to the gun store and purchase this kind of firepower? We need to check it. We need to check it. Now, if it's mental health, then we need to stamp it out. Parents need to report it. Parents need to do something. And more than that, when parents do report it, then our lawmakers need to act. They need to act seriously, with the laws that we already have on the books, to use them in an effective way to deter or stop the next mass shooting. You had a mother in Indiana who reported her son. The authorities did little to nothing. And he went and shot up a FedEx plant right there, and killed innocent people. His own mother reported him. In a state that's led by a Republican legislature. And they did nothing as it relates to whatever laws, whatever tools that they already had in their arsenal, whatever laws they already had on the books. Here you have a concerned mother. This is not a jilted lover or a jealous girlfriend or some strangers who just looking to get even. This is a mother in Indiana who's concerned about her child's behavior, reports him to the authorities. They do little to nothing, take little to no action on what the mother has reported. And innocent people wind up getting killed at a FedEx plant there somewhere in the state of Indiana. I don't have the exacts right here in front of me. But if you know your history and you know what's been going on as of late with these mass shootings, I'm pretty sure you can maybe Google it or put your finger on it some kind of way. This did, in fact, happen in a state with, as I said, Republican-controlled legislature. So while a lot of Republicans up on the Hill, whether in the Senate or the House, are defending the use of these weapons and the private American ownership of these weapons due to critters and wild varmints, we as human beings are being erased. We're dying more than the critters that are supposedly being killed with these weapons. Or one of the bogus reasons that the Republicans have gave as to why people need an AR-15. Let's put some laws on the books with real tooth in it. With real tooth in them. Can we do that? This is not an attack on the Second Amendment or Americans' rights to bear arms. I mean, it's so tired. It's so tired. But to the American public, it's not a one-size-fits-all. I'm not even willing to sit here and say it's a cure-all. But your vote will go a long ways. Your vote will go a long ways in stopping this. Because that's the only way the Republicans and the Democrats are going to be able to work together. If we get more common sense gun legislation Republicans in office. But at this point in time, I think the fair question is, do they even exist? Do they exist to stop the bloodshed? The race war has not even came yet. The race war has not even came yet. But innocent Americans are dying. No one welcomes it. No one wants it. But just for the sake of calming these people who seem so eager and determined to hold on to this weapon so that they'll be ready when it starts. I mean, Republicans, if you could do nothing else, bring some kind of legislation to the table where you can tell them, look, when and if it does start, we'll be sure that you get one. We'll be sure to be able to pass them out. We got them in storage. We got them on lockdown, hundreds of thousands of them. So when it happens, you'll be able to get one then. Do something. Do something. Thoughts and prayers is played out. Thoughts and prayers are prayed. Is played out. Because it seems as if even when you do pray about it, the only one listening is the devil. Or you're praying to the devil. These assault weapons are totally uncalled for in everyday American life. They're totally uncalled for. Unless we're at war. Because that's the type of killing that this weapon has been designed for. It's a mass casualty weapon. When do we think of mass casualties? Any civilized nation. If we are truly civilized, that would be only in a time of war. Right now, we look like a nation of barbarity. Just wanton wholesale slaughter. We look like a nation that relishes bloodshed of the innocent, gore, carnage. How have we failed so low? So if we can't get our politicians, whether it be Democrats or Republicans, to do their job, then we vote or die. And that's our alternative. Vote or die. That's the only way to get some legislation moving up on the Hill. Up in Washington, D.C., that's the only way to get some legislation moving, is to vote these people out. Because we've seen mass killing after mass killing after mass killing. The Republicans do nothing but run for their corners, try to avoid the press, try to avoid even talking about it. The Republicans didn't come out none until there was pressure put on them. With Buffalo, nothing. You heard nothing. But once again in their playbook, something about it. Oh, this is a Fed boy summer. This is some kid who the federal government sponsored to go into this grocery store and kill these people, so that they can have a reason to take away your guns. These conspiracy theories, they're good. I got to give them credit. They're good. Only here to deceive the minds of the simple. So to the American electorate, to the American voter, I say wake up. Because the only way, right now it seems at this point, after shooting after shooting after shooting, the only way that this is going to stop, this is going to cease and desist, is by vote. There's no other way to get these people out that are pro-gun. Children are getting killed. No pity, no sympathy, no thought that, hey, we need to do something here. We need to get rid of this gun, or we need to make it harder to buy this gun. We need to put more checks and balances in place for anyone who thinks of purchasing this weapon. But as I said, as pitiful and bogus as it is what it is. You see where they're at. When asked, why would American citizens need an AR-15? Let's see. Varmints in the chicken coop. Come on. Tell me anything. Tell me anything. The assault weapons ban or assault weapons legislation that would put a ban on the AR-15 being owned by American citizens without a special license or a special need would not be an attack on the Second Amendment. Would not be an infringement on gun-owning Americans. It wouldn't. At least raise the age limit from 18 to 21. If you refuse to ban it, then that's the least you can do for the children who had to suffer and die. Sandy Hook, Uvalde, here in Oxford, Michigan, just to name a few. Parkland. Enough is enough. We're killing off our future. And the ones of our best and brightest youngsters who are not being killed are traumatized in a way that could affect them for the rest of their lives. And if you want mental health to get better for people, then put them in a more calmer environment. Don't put them in an environment where there's more upheaval, there's more chaos, there's more innocent bloodshed. Then there'll never be a cure. There'll just be more mental health copycat crazies, and on and on and on. So common sense gun legislation. That's what we're asking for. We feel like a solution that would go a long way, something that would go a long ways in bringing about a solution to this problem is at least raising the minimum age to purchase one of these AR-15s. Because kids who are 18 years old or younger, whatever the legal age when they can buy one, they seem to only want to kill other human beings with them. Innocent human beings. Innocent human beings. And this is the day and time we're stuck in unless we can vote ourselves out of it. We're stuck now, but it's not a permanent sticky situation. You can vote your way out of it. The question is, will you? All politics are local and they go up to the federal level. So, when it comes to the assault weapons legislation, you got to get some skin in the game. You got to be vocal. We are the people who have the power to stop it. So let's exercise every right within our power. Let's try every means necessary within the bounds of the law to get better common sense gun legislation on the books at the federal level for the protection of all innocent Americans going about their everyday lives, whether in the shopping mall, movie theater, grocery store, hospital, wherever. And raising the minimum age to purchase one of these weapons from 18 to 21 would go a long ways in helping stem the tide of what's going on with assault weapons here in America. Last but not least, we want to dip into January 6th just a little bit. As you know, the hearings are upon us. You have a bipartisan committee. Hats off to Liz Cheney, Representative Kinzinger, for doing the right thing. No matter what pressure that they're feeling, what pressure is being put on them by their Republican colleagues, simply for standing up and telling the truth. We had a free and fair election. Courts at all levels, local, state, federal, wherever the Trump campaign took it, they could find no evidence of voter fraud. But yet, the big lie is alive and well. It's alive and well. We need transparency. We need, all the facts out there that led up to this, and put everything on the table to try to do whatever we can to make sure it never happens again. I mean, this is a democracy. It always has been. And unless there's some kind of act of God, it always will be a functioning democracy where we vote our leaders in. And if they're not doing a good job, we can vote them out. That's the power of the American people have at their ballot box. At the time of the November 2020 elections, the vast majority of Americans knew that it was either Joe Biden or a broken democracy, or irretrievably broken democracy, in the words of John Bolton. Though that was the choice in November 2020 when voters went into the booth to make a decision. They knew that democracy was on the line. After 4 years, they didn't see any signs, very little signs of where America had been made great again. To take America back to a time and place that was a real dark time in America, when America's moving forward. Because that's what the MAGA movement would do. It would take America back in time, not move it forward in a forward-thinking way for bigger ideas, better ideas, innovation, where America leads at throughout the world. Our creative genius. All that was at stake on November the 20th, November of 2020. So it was either Joe Biden or it was a irretrievably broken democracy. And the people made their choice. They went in and made their voices heard. There was nothing stolen about this. Had it been, then the courts would have cited the evidence brought forth by the Trump campaign, and they would have decided accordingly that there had to be a revote, or that certain votes had to be thrown out. They were fraudulent or whatever. This president came into office He came into office on the campaign trail with a propensity for violence, lying, bribing, scheming, whatever it took. In bed with Russia, in bed with WikiLeaks. He came into office on the campaign trail with threats, lies, intimidation, encouraging violence. And that's how he left office, the same way. The same way. Instigating violence through lies, conspiracy. Remember, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and my poll numbers won't change. That should have told the American people everything they needed to know about the mind state of the person that they were putting into office, which basically said, I've gotten away with a lot of things and nothing has happened, so I may as well keep going. And then it's time to reelect him after 4 years. Same lies, intimidation, threats of violence. We've seen it all on January the 6th. So we know this playbook well. And the Republicans, after all evidence was looked at by all levels of the court, the Supreme Court, state court, wherever they took it, they all said the same thing. We can't find any evidence of voter fraud. But the Republicans are still standing behind this. These are Trump's enablers. Now, if no one's above the law, if we live in a system where no one's above the law, then we need to take the appropriate action here. For those of us who are old enough to remember the hit show Leave It to Beaver, this is what it's like when you put Eddie Haskell in the White House. If you're familiar with Leave It to Beaver, you're very familiar with Eddie Haskell, Wally's friend, a smug, pompous jerk. Every time Mr. and Miss Cleaver come around, he was so polite, he was so nice, he was so mannerful. But as soon as they were out of the picture, gone, Wally had to constantly threaten to slug him. Now, why would Wally have to do that? But here we are. This is what it's like when you put Eddie Haskell in the White House. Or January 6th can easily occur. But because he's going to lie, steal, cheat, he's going to do anything to win. There are no stops that he won't pull out to keep from being a loser. Nobody wants to lose. You know, when I'm on my phone playing games, if I go to the tennis course, I don't want to lose. I'm playing to win. But since I'm not God, then there's no assurity that I'm going to win every time. So when I do lose, I get in the mind state, well, okay, I got to go back to the drawing board. I got to practice harder. I got to get stronger. I got to get faster. Then I'll come back. And I'm looking for the W hard then. I'm really looking for the W then. Very intensely. But January the 6th was just, as the news media has been saying, based on no evidence that the courts have found of wrongdoing or voter fraud, it's the big lie. But how can you be surprised at the end of the president's first term that he would come out with a big lie? He was lying all through the 4 years he was in office. The fact checkers couldn't hardly keep up. You know, every time Bernie Sanders would get on the Sunday talk shows or whatever, he would say without hesitation that the president is a pathological liar, a habitual liar. And it's a sad truth. It's a sad truth. You know, even though I vote Democrat, You know, if there's a Republican president in, it doesn't make me happy to see him lying. So it's a sad truth. There's not nothing to cheer about that, you know, when you're on the left and you got a president who's on the right and he's constantly lying. There's nothing to cheer about, like, you know, oh, yippee yay, you know, he's lying so much. I know we're going to win in November. It's not good for democracy. It's no kind of way good for democracy. But he came in lying. And he left out pushing a big lie because he lost. And he's a real sore loser. He's a real sore loser. So he came up with the big lie, and then therefore we had an insurrection on January the 6th to try to stop a peaceful transfer of power. The president had no desire to try to reinvent himself, to go and make the case to the American voter and come back again. There are not enough, you don't have enough voters to support you. You don't have the political support you need when you're constantly lying, bribing, getting impeached, looking at right-wing hate groups and saying these are very fine people. You're diminishing your chances of getting a second term. Joe Biden cleaned his clock in the debates. Everybody knew that. Everybody saw that. Who watched the debates knew that Joe Biden won. All Trump can do was go to the Republican playbook of fear, fear-mongering, personal attacks. And so it's not about January the 6th and the dangers thereof. In the Republican playbook, in the Republican mind, Hunter Biden is the threat. How preposterous. How preposterous is that? Here we go again. First it was Hillary's email. Now it's Hunter. In their playbook, there's always one person that they could bring out, and that's the book, and make them the boogeyman of America. That we're all facing doom and gloom if we put Hillary in because she's got these emails somewhere stashed away that's gonna, you know, give all our trade secrets. Our national security is going to be compromised because of all these emails. BS. 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 So he tried these things in his first 4 years. He wasn't able to make America great. So he didn't earn the second term. But through lies, intimidation, encouraging people to look for votes and find votes, he tried to hold on to power, but it didn't work because the system of checks and balances held. Now you'll have the Republicans to compare January the 6th, and they'll say, well, what about Black Lives Matter and the riots and burning of cities? Once again, bogus. Once again, spin. If you have a rogue police officer who just nonchalantly takes the life of a human being with no more care and consideration as if they had their knee on a pesky fly, and snuff out the life of a human being, then people are going to wake up. They're going to wake up with anger. They're going to wake up in anger. They're going to wake up in determination. They're going to wake up focused to make a change. But that's where Republicans at. Oh, well, what about the Black Lives Matter riots? There were no riots. The law enforcement experts, the people who were on the ground investigating, know that by far and large, these were peaceful protests. And if anything, there were anarchists in the crowd trying to stir up violence, trying to stir up upheaval to get the protesters to rise up in a more violent manner in order to have an excuse to start a race war. That's who was causing the problems in the rioting all across America in the summer of 2020. That's where it stemmed from. But if you let the Republicans tell it and you let them have their way, January 6th was nothing. That wasn't a big deal. Well, I tell you, to my Republican colleagues, I say this. If there's some rogue officer out there who attempts to do this again, then you're going to see the same thing. Maybe on an even larger scale. Because the human spirit is too dominant. It's too caring overall. And this is what this was in the summer of 2020. It was a movement of the human spirit. Because the whole melting pot marched. The whole melting pot protested. It wasn't just Negroes. It was Caucasians, Asians, Latinos. And it was a movement that was felt around the world when it comes to police brutality. And you have Republicans come out, oh, we back the blue, we back the blue, we back the blue. Then January 6th comes, the Capitol Hill police officer under attack. Officer Sicknick is killed. There's another officer there who, through whatever reasons, stress, hopelessness, whatever, took his own life. And it was a sad day in America. It was a sad time in America. But now, just they go right to their playbook and pull out the hypocrisy. Now, all of a sudden, they're not back in the blue. Trump's talking about Ashley Babbitt. Not one time did he mention the Capitol Hill policeman. And this man was a sitting president. This man was a sitting president who has sworn to protect and defend the Constitution. And he did just the opposite because he couldn't win. So that's what January the 6th boiled down to. A big lie perpetrated by 45, the 45th president of the United States of America, to tear down democracy, to make the Constitution almost null and void, whereas he took an oath with his right hand in the air and another hand on the Bible. He took an oath to swear where he swore to defend and protect it. He tried to do everything to tear it down. This is what led up to January the 6th, a big lie. A big lie. But now we have the hearings going on. Let the truth prevail. And let the lies take a permanent backseat. Let the lies be permanently, constantly losing. Because they're on the wrong side of history. So we welcome the bipartisan commission, the bipartisan panel who are investigating to see where the facts take them. And wherever the facts take them, then they will come out with a final report on the root cause of January the 6th, the instigators, the whole 9 yards. But know that it's very necessary. It's very unpatriotic for the Republicans to target the rights of Americans. And they're reading the reports just like we are. They know that this wasn't a woke mob. This was the American melting pot, fed up with police brutality in this country, taking a stand. And if there was any violence being committed, if there was any acts of vandalism or arson, a lot of it was wholeheartedly being started by right-wing infiltrators who had infiltrated the crowds and was doing everything in their power to stir up more chaos, which they would hope might lead to a race war. That's the bottom line. That's the soluble fact. And if not, we challenge any of our listeners, anyone who would come onto this broadcast and hear this, to give us any evidence to the contrary. But this is what the investigators on the ground have told us. When it comes to violence during the protest, scenes of anarchy, as I said, vandalism, arson, not by peaceful protesters. This was done by outside influences trying to stir up even more. And it didn't make America great. One of the other things that was one of the leading contributing factors as to why 45 didn't get a second term, because the American people was able to see through it. It didn't make America great. It didn't make America great, not once. Now you have people coming out. Defense Secretary Esper coming out now and saying, 45 was floating ideas like, can we shoot them in the legs? Peaceful protesters. Peaceful protesters. Peaceful protesters. Can we shoot them in the leg? I never knew autocracy or fascism to prevail in this country. Like I say, those are the things that we denounce. But that right there from Defense Secretary Esper is more of a statement that could be made by a would-be autocrat, would-be fascist leader. So there's no wonder he's always ranting and raving against Antifa. Antifa. But the America I grew up in has always been anti-fascist. We've always been against fascism. But, perhaps if Stephen Miller is whispering in the president's ear that Antifa is bad, he's dumb enough to go for it. Because Stephen Miller knows that Trump knows no better than what you tell him. He's not educated like that. He don't know how to separate out the facts of what's good about Antifa versus what's bad about fascists. He don't know how to separate and sort that out for himself. So whatever Stephen Miller whispers in his ear, hey, it's understandable that he's going to go for it. But the facts will come out in the January 6th hearings, no matter what the Republicans say. They want to dismiss it as a witch hunt or something that's separating the country, or it's going to divide the country. If Democrats had done this, they'd be all the more calling for military assistance, calling for some kind of armed response towards the Democrats. So don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. This investigation is very necessary in order to make sure that something like this never happens again. The big lie. That's what caused January the 6th. The notion that you can only beat a Trump if you rig the election or if you cheat on him. And then what's worse, the Republicans that know better are going along with this. They're going right along with it. So let's leave them on the wrong side of history. As I said, hats off to Representative Cheney, Representative Kinzinger, for having the patriotic nerve to step up and defend the Republic against their own party, against their own political beliefs. It hurts. It's not something that they're happy to do, but they're doing their job. When they were sworn in, they were sworn to protect and defend the Constitution also. Carry themselves in a certain ethical way. Ethics matter. So hats off to them. They're doing a great job, and we ought to give them, our fullest support to see this thing through. And let's see how deep it went up into the Oval Office, or whether it just stopped at the secretary's door. We need to see just how deep and serious this conspiracy was. So let the truth come out. Let's investigate the facts and just put it all out there. No matter how harmful, no matter how painful it is. This has nothing to do with hurting a political cause or hurting one's party's chances of regaining power. Democracy is on the line here. And if the Republicans care anything about democracy, then they wouldn't try to confuse the issue, to make it seem as if we as Americans, we don't take serious riotous mobs, which nothing can be further than the truth. Because I said there were right-wing operatives, alt-right-wing operatives in these crowds during the protests of 2020. So don't let the Republicans confuse the issue to make it seem as if, on one hand, the American government looks away from one type of violent action, but then they go all out to prosecute another potential set of violent actions. That's not the case. That's not the case. Those who participated in the demonstrations of 2020, when they went beyond the law, when they crossed over the line, they were arrested. They were dealt with. When they crossed the line from peaceful protest to acts of violence, they were dealt with. They were dealt with. So let the same be said, let the same be done when it comes to the January 6th insurrectionists who breached the Capitol uninvited to stop a peaceful transfer of power based on a big lie. We will watch and monitor this situation, as well as, continue to monitor the economy, where the assault weapons legislation is going. But, most importantly, where the January 6th investigations take us. We need to see where it started, where it began, and where it ended at. As far as the operatives, did we have any Republican operatives coordinating with the extremists? Any planning with the extremists? And this investigation will do well to bring it all to a forefront, to bring everything out into the open so the American people can see with their own eyes and ears what really happened, and then make a educated decision when it comes time for the next election. Democracy is truly on the line. Democracy is truly on the line. Why? Maybe because they don't have the votes. Maybe because they can't make the case to get the votes. So now they want to lie, steal, and cheat. It's in the Republican playbook. Well documented. Study it. And study it to defeat it. Study it to stamp it out. To beat it anytime it tries to rear its ugly head. So in conclusion, let the hearings, as I said, let everything play out. Let everything come out. Don't be distracted. Don't be misled by the lies, by the hypocrisy, by the spin of the Republicans and their greatest spinning. We all know what would have happened had the Democrats attempted such a thing as this. This would be all they want to talk about, hammer away at it, hammer away at it. But now the Republicans don't want to deal with it. They don't want to engage in it because it hurts their cause. They don't care how it hurt the country. They don't care how it hurt the country. So country over party, all day, every day. Country over party. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican. That's what we here at Soluble encourage. Country over party. The Constitution over any autocracy. Fascism. So let the January 6th committee do their work. They're doing a great job. Let's continue to support them and be patient as they take a deep dive into the big lie and bring truth to the light. Whereas we were walking in darkness with lies, propaganda, false conspiracies, of ballot harvesting, bogus rigged voting machines. Nothing can be further than the truth. This president refuses to look at his body of work in 4 years and see that he failed. He refused to look at his body of work for the first 4 years and see that he failed. This is the mark of a weak, insecure man. So let the January 6th committee investigating the big lie, the insurrection, let them do their job. They're doing it effectively. They're doing thorough investigations to bring out all the truthful facts to see what led up to January the 6th, who were the players, and how it could have threatened our democracy, and get all the facts out there so this could never happen again. This is Soluble signing off until Wednesday. We'd like to say thank you for tuning in and good night.